Welcome everyone to a brand new episode of Comms Club Live. I'm Kelly McNamara, Digital Events Marketing Manager at Staffbase. I'm so excited for this episode. We're going to dive into value-driven engagement in organizations. I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Emily Cornett-Ching. Emily, welcome. We're so excited to have you on. I'll give you a little, the spotlight so you can give a little bit about your background and your time at Staffbase.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kelly. Really excited to join you today. I'm Emily. I'm a senior people experience business partner with Staffbase, and I've been with the team about 2 years now. Currently, I support our global marketing team, our customer success team, and I've supported our product team as well. So, pretty diverse view across the organization. And then, aside from almost 5 years in technology now and software specifically. Prior to that, I've got some experience in professional services, skilled trades, and manufacturing, also in HR. So I'm really passionate about people, passionate about business, and just finding creative solutions to help achieve our business goals with people at the forefront. So thank you for having me on today. Excited to talk about values.
Perfect. Well, everyone, let us know where you're joining from. I know everyone's just still joining. It's still the top of 10:31, so we'll give about another 30 seconds. But I'm currently in Pennsylvania, which is pretty sunny. I'm excited for the spring weather. I just got back from Mexico, though, so I was spoiled with hot sun and beaches. But the weather's pretty nice here too. Emily, where are you joining from?
It's funny, Kelly, I was wondering what was giving you that amazing glow, and I just assumed it was values, but now it makes a lot of sense,
Obviously.
the Mexican sun. I am joining in from Vancouver. So it's actually 7:30 here for me, nice and bright and early. I've got my big cup of beans here to keep me going. But yeah, really excited. It's a little rainy here. I think people expect that when they think of Vancouver, but we have had quite a bit of sun before today.
But Vancouver's beautiful though. Like I've heard nothing but good things about Vancouver. I have to make it out there. All my Canadian colleagues, and I know Canada's so big, and I always just think of Montreal.
Yeah.
It's way bigger, way bigger.
It is very big. It is very big. We often joke because we have teams in Europe that if you drive the distance from, one province to the next in Europe, you're pretty much driving straight off the continent into
Yeah.
the ocean. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. But no, I'm super excited, especially to talk to you about values because I mean I am biased, but I do think at Staffbase we have some pretty strong values, and that I know our culture is really revolves around them. So let's kind of just start from the basics. What, in your opinion, what do you think is an important role values play in an organization?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a great place to start because values often can have this reputation of just being jargon that you see up on the wall, right? Even when we hear of a webinar on values being hosted by an HR professional, we might think, oh, great, more fluffy HR content. But the reality is, in today's world, organizational values are more important than ever. And there was a study by LinkedIn, I think it focused in Europe primarily, but it showed that 59% of respondents would not work for an organization that doesn't share their values. And actually 55% reported that even a pay increase wouldn't change their minds. And when we think of new generations of the workforce, they need more to feel happy and feel fulfilled. When we think of, the Blackfoot Nation, or better known also as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's physiological needs, there's security, there's safety at the bottom of the pyramid. And these are no longer needs that people are striving for on the day to day, right? They're now seen kind of as table stakes or a part of life. And so the focus on new generations is really on more complex needs like self actualization and purpose. And work is one way for individuals to achieve this and move up that pyramid. And so work is commonly seen as a way for individuals to achieve self actualization, achieve purpose, and not just as a way to pay the bills, right? And just get paid. So when they're thoughtfully designed and incorporated into work, values can really help individuals achieve that purpose, right, that they're striving for. And it can be a huge differentiator for an organization. I can go through, sorry, before you jump in,
Yeah.
I can go through a couple like tangible examples because I know that's kind of more conceptual, if it would be helpful.
Yeah,
So
we
when
love examples. So please, I know our audience loves examples. So yes, definitely.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Examples is the way to go today. I mean, obviously values offer us guiding principles, right? They really
Mhm.
serve as that North Star for decisions, actions in our organization. And they represent what matters most to us, both individually and collectively. And so I always think of values as, the way that people are acting when leaders aren't in the room, or the way that we're acting when we're facing adversity at work. It's also a decision-making framework. So similarly, when we're faced with tough choices, or tough with tough choices, they help us navigate ambiguity, and they help to align our actions to our ethics and to our core principles. I think cultural identity is a really important piece with values, right? They help create a sense of belonging,
Mhm.
create a sense of inclusivity, and then that correlates to talent retention and talent attraction. So we talked about it a little bit already, but values differentiate how we show up in the marketplace and who wants to join our company. We often hear it from candidates who
Yeah.
join Staffbase that say, and you may have heard it as well, the values really resonated with me, and I wanted to join the team. I think a couple other final ones are really brand reputation, because we think about values often in context of internal, but they're very much external as well, right? And I think we'll probably go through a few examples later in the session, but Patagonia is a great example where their values resonate both internally and externally, and they
Yeah.
very much are guiding principles for them. And as a result of that, they have great brand reputation. And then my personal favorite part of values is I also think they give organizations a sense of resilience, right? So in times of crisis, in times of change, they do provide that stability, and they anchor us and help guide us towards the right path forward. So values really enable organizations and people, right, to act consistently when they're delivering on their mission. And if we think of our mission as
Mhm.
our what, our values are kind of like our how.
No, I love that, and I love how you brought in resilience because it is so true. I mean, listen, burnout is inevitable. I don't care who you are. There's going to be a time in your career and whatever in your life where you just feel a little burnt out. And there's so many times that when I've worked at a company with such strong values, it really has helped. It really, and they're embodied in the culture, and you feel like you can everything from you talking to leadership, from you working with colleagues, from the work that you're doing. If you have strong values that like are kind of seeping through all that, it gives you a purpose. It gives you kind of that resilience to keep going. Um,
Mhm.
so I love what you just said there, and kind of, I mean, Staffbase has been, again, unbiased. It has been a company that when I got hired, the values were very much driven into the culture. It was very much like, let's talk about our values. How does your growth relate back to our values? And what's interesting is since I've been here, we recently changed our values. So I do want to kind of dive into that a bit. And can you talk a little bit more about why we update our values and where we're going with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear the values resonate so much. And I'm sure that's not just because you are on a call right now with HR. um, absolutely. So, empathy, growth, and ownership were our values for a long time. And at the core, they've actually remained, but we have reframed our values now to we truly care. When you grow, we grow, and
Mhm.
we take ownership. And our values originally came about really around Staffbase's inception, and they helped guide the organization at that time. They were originally viewed, though, as a starting point, and I think that's often the case, right?
Mhm.
Values are expected to evolve over time. Let's not try to get it perfect right away. Let's just get something that is going to make sense and is going to support us in all moving in the right direction. And that really was the case here, except for that they ended up being around for 10 years. So when we were at a stage where we were identifying, hey, it really is time to refine these
Mhm.
values, there were a couple things. One was the interpretation of the values was starting to feel inconsistent. And so our values at their core, as you heard, empathy, ownership, growth, they were really simple, and simplicity can be really great. But if you don't have the detail on how you're actually expected to apply those at work, chances are really high that people are going to interpret or understand them differently and then apply them differently,
Yeah.
especially in a context where our team was no longer all in one office. We started in Chemnitz, we had an office hub, and we've grown globally. And so different backgrounds, perspectives are going to contribute to different understandings of those simple values. Empathy, for example, you know, people could interpret that as empathy for each other, empathy for our customers,
Mhm.
empathy for ourselves, right? You mentioned burnout. For sure, that's a reality today. And without being clear on here's actually what we mean by empathy, we really weren't able to support people to achieve that and live that value clearly in the way we were expecting. And I think the other big piece is we just outgrew them. The core values were very central still to who we were, but we had gone through a lot of change over that 10 years. We'd gone through acquisitions, strategic direction changes. And so it really was time to make sure that, the values evolved with the organization. And I think there are a lot of reasons that can happen for other companies as well. And it's
Mhm.
healthy to ultimately have your values evolve.
No, I agree. I love, like, I know in our plan call when you talked about that and it was so transparent, it is true. Like, you can outgrow a value. And I think it's important for like, it's not bad to say you did. You know what I mean? It's not bad to say, I outgrew this. We need to change it. We need to reevaluate it, because I think when it comes to values and kind of what you mentioned before, is it's really important to not have them just as jargon on a wall, right?
Mhm.
And I think when you do outgrow something and like it's not moving with your company, it can very well easily turn into like just motivation on like a poster. Like, you're like, we get
Yeah.
it. Um,
The
so
cat posters. We
yeah,
all love the cat
like,
posters.
I
Yeah.
remember being in elementary school seeing them, and I'm like, all right, I get it. Hang in there. Like, doing my
Hang in there. That's
um,
excellent advice. Excellent
yes,
advice.
but like you said, like, hang in there for what? Like, if you have to really have actions to follow those values. Um, and I do want to stress to our audience members, I mean, I'm having such a good time with Emily and have so many questions, but if you have any questions throughout this event, please ask them. We're going to try to weave them into the conversation. But I don't want to take up, I mean, I feel selfish asking all my questions, Emily, to you. But a little bit to switch gears, and, we talked about why we update our values. What are some tips on how to operationalize these values, right? So they're not just jargon on a wall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to take it back, I guess one step before we start operationalizing, there is something to be said about validating the values themselves, right? And we did have a process for that where we actually had I think around 30 employees. They were volunteers that ultimately they became culture champions, and they were heavily involved in the process of redefining our values. They're from all areas of the organization, all levels, because it's really important to represent those voices, right? So that those values do resonate. So that was kind of our process of refining the values. In terms of operationalizing them, I mean, it's the $1 million question, right? Values are meant to influence organizational decisions and culture, but how useful are they if we aren't holding people accountable to them, or we aren't able to hold people accountable to them? So I try to think of it in kind of two key groups, right? I think of managers or leaders, and I think of individual contributors. Managers are arguably the most critical because they influence culture. They set the bars within their teams. They need to be equipped to really role model the values and thread them through every interaction that they have. So, one really impactful way that we operationalized our values was by developing a leadership code. And the leadership code, it was also created with input from the business. Again, I think validation is really critical in anything that you're going to roll out and expect people to stick to and live by. But what we ended up with was, for each of our three values, there are three ways that leaders are expected to live that value. So if we're talking about when you grow, we grow, we have, prompts around coaching, around mentoring, around really specific pieces that leaders are expected to do to help that value come to life in our organization. And then leaders are held accountable to that, right? It
Mhm.
provides a shared language, a shared understanding. It also, again, provides that accountability piece, and it's transparent. Employees can find this leadership code. They can see, look, what's expected of leaders in Staffbase, and how can I look forward to kind of growing and being supported as a result of the leadership code. They also helped us focus skill development for leaders specifically, right? Around investing in the right training and resources and identifying a competency framework to help them deliver on that leadership code. And so it really did give us focus that intrinsically came from our values. Now, I don't want to spend all the time on managers and leaders because, of course, the entire team is really important, and we want to make sure that the values are threaded through the entire experience. So the way we look at it is kind of thinking about the entire employee journey and where it makes sense for those touch points as values. And that starts even before someone joins the organization, right?
Mhm.
Our employer branding campaign, I'm sure you've seen it. Maybe some of the listeners have seen it. But it's all around ownership. It's all around we take ownership, which is one of our core values. And when we're attracting people, that's a big part of the profile that we want. So we want that to be at the forefront when we're in the market. We also have an onboarding program that introduces the values through interactive videos. All of the information is in our portal. Just, I guess, to list off a few more examples, because you said examples are the name of the game. So I will go by it. Peer recognition. We have a process where people are asked to include the value or values that are exemplified when you're giving that recognition. So it's all kind of tying back. Our growth and development process incorporates questions around our values. We offer a growth budget, right, to support that growth value. We also provide a paid volunteers day, and every Friday is off in August to show that we truly care, right? Like, we're not just saying we care and then saying, come to work and do it all, and we're not going to show you how we care or ways that we can care for you. Even our talent management process, often when you're thinking of talent and assessing it and supporting it, you're thinking of performance and you're thinking of potential. We actually take the perspective of, instead of potential, we're looking at values alignment. We're looking at examples of how people are demonstrating values, because we found that's actually the strongest indicator for potential in our organization. And then we also collect feedback on the values. So through our engagement survey, through pulse checks, we're constantly trying to get an understanding if they continue to resonate and if people are seeing them truly live day to day, or if it's something that we need to revisit and do more. So lots of examples, lots of ways to hopefully create some accountability, create some clarity for the team. But yeah, those are some of the ways that we've found it successful to operationalize.
I love it. And I think it's so weird because, like, I work for you guys, but like I genuinely do think it's so good how Staffbase does, hold itself accountable as well, right? Like to make sure people are engaged in the values. I feel like there's always a survey going on. There's always, check marks going on, whatever it might be, like, to make sure that, values we might change again. Like, you don't know how you're going to change. And I think to keep our employees engaged with these values, it's so important to actually hear their voices, from leadership to managers to the employees. Like, it's so important to hear all those voices. So,
it's so great. And not to plug our own tool, but I will say what I really appreciate as well about our platform is that you can incorporate those quick pulse checks into anything, right? You can send them out, you can add them at the bottom of a post, because I do think when you're constantly getting feedback, there's always a risk of survey fatigue. So we don't want everything to be this quarterly half-hour survey as our way of getting inputs. I love that there's that flexibility in our tool where, you can actually do a really quick, like, here's a post, we're announcing something really quick. How did that resonate? Like, what are your thoughts? And you capture that feedback real time without it feeling like a huge lift to the employee, which I think is often feedback you hear when it comes to.
I love that. Because especially with social media too, right? Like, everyone's on social media. You're so easy. And I feel like in today's age, everyone's so quick to just comment right away. So it's harder to get people. I feel like, fill this 10-minute survey. Like, it's nice to be like, I can just give my feedback right away. It's not work. It's not a heavy lift. So totally. No, I love that. And I guess to give a little bit, steer away from Staffbase this show.
Enough of us.
Enough of Staffbase. But could you share any examples of companies that you've seen that have strong values that really have successfully integrated them into their organization?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to share a couple examples. I think one that comes to mind is Salesforce. Salesforce, obviously a really well-known company, and for them, innovation is one of their core values. And a while back now, they hired a chief equality officer, and they also created an office of equality. And the purpose of, this new structure, this new role, was to foster equality internally and externally, but also to drive innovation, because research shows that in order to innovate, it's important to have, varying perspectives and diversity in the team. And so I thought that was a really interesting example of how, your structure can represent or foster your values. I think another example that I already mentioned earlier, but I would be remiss not to say it because they're such an incredible organization, was Patagonia. We all know their focus on social responsibility, right? And some of the things that, as I was learning more about Patagonia, that they're doing is, they're encouraging customers to bring back clothes for store credit to reduce waste. They're donating 1% of all of their sales to grassroots environmental organizations. Their employees are volunteering over 4,000 hours every year for environmental causes. And then what really blew my socks off was in 2022, when the founder was looking for an exit strategy.
Mhm.
And he opted not to sell the company or to take it public, but him and his family, they transferred their ownership, which was valued at about 3 billion at the time, to a specifically designed trust and a nonprofit organization. And basically, the intention was to preserve the company's independence first and foremost, and to ensure that all of its profits, which is around 100 million per year, continually are used to combat climate change and protect undeveloped land around the globe. So, talk about a way to make sure that your values live on and are a
Yeah.
lasting legacy even beyond you, right? I think it's clear to see, and there are certainly data to back the fact that companies who live their values do see a positive impact on the bottom line because of employee productivity and loyalty and brand trust.
Yeah, and I think what Patagonia they do so well is it's not just internally, right? It's externally. So how do you
Totally.
think that let's use them as an example. Like, how do you think that that plays a part in like employee retention and also hiring new, attracting new talent when like you are, very clear in your values, not just internally but externally as well?
Mhm. Totally. I mean, everyone knows how much time, investment, support, resources go into hiring somebody and onboarding them and getting them ramped up. And so to do that to a point where then, 5 months in, 6 months in, they self identify and say, actually, you know what, this isn't really the right fit for me. That
Mhm.
can be a really tough process, both for the
Yeah.
employee, but also for the organization. And if you have ways to be so clear on who you are as an organization and what you put first, what you hold at the highest value, it's gonna act as, a self-selection process at the beginning. Like, the people that are coming to you are people that really wanna be there for the right reasons.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's incredible, and I think, often customers become employees, and often employees become customers, especially when we're talking internal and external, um, familiarity with values and what a company stands for.
No, that's so great. I always say that when now I'm very happy at Staffbase. I've been here for 2 years, but when I was in the meat and grind of trying to find a job and everything, it really is so true. Like, you really have to I don't want to work for a company that doesn't. I love when someone says their values. I love when they and explicitly show how they show them, because I don't
Yeah,
want to work for an organization. And they don't want me if I don't agree. So I think that's so, like you said, important to really lay it out clearly, and it's a match. Um,
totally.
Oh, we do have a question. Or a comment. We tend to single out these companies with big, audacious values, but I'd love to see more examples of companies with simple values that they deliver on every single day. Um, I love that. Thank you, Zahn. That was a great remark. Emily, what are your thoughts on that? Like, trying to just have simple values at the core of a company.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think the simpler the values are, typically the easier it is for people to get on board and understand. When we talk about the simplicity of our values originally, it wasn't that we wanted to change, what they were at the core. We just wanted to provide a little more context of how that applies to the business. I completely agree with the comment around, smaller organizations who are living it every day. It's so impressive to see those companies, and especially because often they don't have these budgets to build out,
Mhm.
an office of equality, and there aren't the same resources or reputation available to them to leverage. And so actually your values become even more important. When thinking of examples for today, I was looking through some smaller companies as well, and I wanted to share some that would resonate with the group. But I love the comment, and I think it's really important, as you're, building out your own value strategy, to not just look to the big players, right, and see what people even in your local market, industry, and similar size are doing, because it can provide some
Mhm.
really good inspiration.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I know Karen said she agrees as well. Like, simple, uncomplicated values that people can remember and resonate with. Which
Yeah,
is so true. Yeah, and like Emily said, I think simplicity is great, and just providing context for that is really what makes them operationalize. That word's gonna be the death of me today. Um,
Totally. And I
Um,
think, I mean, I touched on this a little bit, but I think also what shifted there is a one word value when we're all working in the same office or we're a smaller team can actually work really well because
yeah,
it's mutually understood what that means. We see it every day, we feel it every day. When you have a larger dispersed workforce, I think that's where the need comes a little bit more to make sure that that context is clear because it's unfair to hold somebody accountable or say, hey, this is how we're expecting everyone to show up to work if actually that's not entirely clear to everyone or they understand it or interpret it in a different way.
definitely, definitely. I know we're coming up close to time, so if you have any
Mhm.
questions, audience, please let us know. I'm loving these comments. I love when, I gain so much from the audience, so I appreciate everyone who's participating in the chat. But Emily, to go off that, like I know we were talking about a little bit about dealing with employees that are, more hybrid, dealing with remote employees, dealing with, on-site employees, people who aren't at their desk, non-desk employees. Are there any tips that you might have to kind of alleviate the challenges of like operationalizing your values with all different employees?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to bring it back, what we've been touching on,
Mhm.
clarity is really going to be the most important thing. When you are bringing values to life as well through programs or initiatives, you do have to think of these different groups in different capacities. And I mean, we've gone through it too. I'm sure every organization has gone through it where people who are remote feel like maybe they're not getting the same treatment as those who are in office. And
Mhm.
there's this kind of you have to find this balance because it can be challenging to give the same experience to everyone who isn't in office. Um, the same experience when we think of like a holiday party, right? Some of the things that we've done in the past is okay, how can we send out individual kind of like baskets or things that they can do so that they can still interact? How can we make an on-site event accessible, whether that's virtual, whether that's a meal at the office and then a DoorDash gift card. So there are a lot of different things that you can do, but you have to be really intentional. We both got the bug now. Just we're making up words. You heard these all here first, folks. So use them if you would like. You have to be really intentional and be aware of the different groups within your organization and how you can pertain to them when you are
Yeah.
rolling programs out, rolling out initiatives that relate to the values. But I think, yeah, inclusivity is huge, and clarity is huge when it comes to a dispersed workforce.
No, I love that. Yeah, and just making sure who you're talking. That's great. No, I've thank you so much, Emily. This has been so insightful for me and kind of giving a background, I think, of more insight on me of like where I work from and why we change and everything. So I appreciate it. And anybody, if you have any last final questions, please let us know. But you can also continue the conversation and join us at Voices on May 16th. It is not too late to join. It's a jam-packed agenda. It's going to be a great time. So I highly recommend everyone joining. And I'll put it in the chat right now if it lets me. But yeah, sign up for Voices today. You can also check out our website for more, stay up to date with more of our LinkedIn Live episodes and also our webinars. Emily, thank you so much for joining us today. For all of our attendees, make sure you follow us on Staffbase. You can follow Emily on LinkedIn and myself to stay up to date with what's going on at Staffbase and also what our next events are. But yeah, Emily, any final remarks before we close out?
I mean, I will give one final remark because I know Adam Grant is speaking at
Yes,
Voices, and
yes,
so I'm very excited for that. And one thing that I heard from a podcast, from his work life podcast, that I thought maybe could be relevant here when we think of how we can monitor the success of values and check in with our employees, make sure they resonate, is a concept of reverse mentoring. And that is really where leadership is paired with a mentor, which is typically someone kind of in the front line of the organization. And they learn from them, right? They learn from their experience, their journey, what's going on down on the front line and getting their feedback. And I thought, what an interesting concept, a very cool concept.
yeah.
Um, to just stay in touch, especially as organizations get larger. So reverse mentoring, check out Adam's
Adam Grant.
podcast, Work Life, and come to Voices.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Emily. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon, night, or day, wherever you're joining from. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kelly.